Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Dr. Tim Bagwell, and Tim is um, lives in Missouri, and Tim and I have been friends for 20 years. And
Yes.
and we've over the years we've talked about the expansion of the House of Representatives. And Tim is going to give his argument on why we need more representatives in the House than we have now. So, Tim, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, we've seen some of the problems, two problems, and it's actually hard to. I just want to preface this by saying it's hard to talk about increasing the number of seats in the House without also talking about getting rid of Citizens United, because the money is still overvoting the representation. But we won't talk so much about that today, about Citizens United, but it's an important factor, I think, in any electoral reform.
Mhm.
And the increase of the House. And we see the problem right now with Trump attempting to increase Republican seats. We have a scarcity of seats. There's no increase in the seats. We have 435 seats.
Right.
He's trying to increase them in Texas and other states, and most recently in my new home state of Missouri, where we have 8 congressional seats, 2 Democrats, 6 Republicans, and they've redrawn the seats, but they've gone to court. Teams such as Mark Elias and the Democrats have gone to court to stop the Missouri the Missouri Compromise, stop the Missouri reapportionment of the congressional seats, basically getting rid of one Democratic seat. All this to get rid of one Democratic seat out of
So
Kansas City.
you ran for Congress in the state of Illinois.
Right.
Is Illinois a Democratic state?
Well, yes. The Illinois' problem is that the Democrats are clumped up north against Lake Michigan. The rest of the state, except for the few counties down by St. Louis area that are largely Republican, it'll be Illinois could maybe squeeze one additional Democratic seat out, but be very, very difficult. Things start to look like spaghetti out of Chicago, but long districts coming out of Chicago. So I don't know how Illinois would do it with only 18 seats. With 1 second, there's been so many. Illinois loses a seat every 10 years. That's a problem it has.
Wow.
Yeah, and right now we're at 17 in Illinois, and when I ran for Congress, it was there were 19 seats. So since I ran starting in 2004, which is when we met,
Mhm.
it's been progressively losing seats, and this is they shouldn't be losing seats. There should be a reapportionment and a growth in the U.S. House. Now, here's what happened, just so the listeners and viewers understand, is that this isn't it. It's similar to like the oaths of office. Everyone thinks that God bless America, under God, and all that started at the inception of America, and it did not. It's not in the Constitution. The limit of the number of seats is not in the Constitution. The reapportionment is, but not a limitation in any strict number. But in 1911, they began discussions on reapportionment, and they were looking. They already had about 433 seats, and then they were looking at that time admitting New Mexico and Arizona, and so they wanted to have it set at 535. Now that was in the Apportionment Act under Public Law 62-5 in 1911. Then it took effect in 1913. But here is the thing: is that they didn't really get reapportioned. There was a failure to reapportion after the census of 1920. So reapportionment didn't happen until the 1929 Permanent Reapportionment Act, which solidified the 435 and under public law 71-13, and it's been that way ever since. And here's the
You,
problem. Here's
let,
the
let
problem.
me let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Mm, Since then, Hawaii and Alaska have become states, How did they keep it at 435 when
They
they
keep on. They increased the size of the number of people in the congressional districts. Good point. Thank you. That's a very good point. So they kept on increasing the size. I don't know if I have um, that chart available to me right now. Give me a moment. And so there should be a graph here someplace. Courtesy of once I find the graph. Right. So here's a chart that they have. This is under from the American Academy of Sciences, Arts and Sciences, who have a proposal of on how many to increase. But in 1910, they had set it 430. The number had accrued to four. They're saying accrued to 435 with 210,000 people in each. And what they kept on doing then, with a cap on those numbers, they just kept on increasing till now it's 770,000 people per district, which meant that they just took more people rather than give the people more representatives.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in doing that, here was the thing about that was that both parties loved it. They loved the predictability of it because they knew, but they were able to run data on the census predicting what states would win and which states would lose congressional seats. You know, and even with this proposal by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, there would still be some predictability, but less predictability, and more seats and more representation. And their proposal, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and I don't know if they're the first originators of it. I think there's some formulas out there that also get us to this. But basically it would be 581,000 people per district at this time, and with an increase in the number of seats to um, by 150 plus one, because if you do 150 to 430 to the 435, you have they made it come out so there wasn't an even number. I would argue that what they also didn't anticipate is the possibility of DC and Puerto Rico being admitted, but those would still grow. We would not cap them. We would simply grow. So DC would mean one more congressional seat, and a shock to the Republicans. I think it comes down to, let me check the data. I think I got to make sure this is correct. 6 congressmen from Puerto Rico. Six. Six congressmen from Puerto Rico could wipe out the bottom states in terms of representation, because some of the states under this formula still just get one, because you basically have to have the 581 plus 581. You can't just do it. Well, I think that would have to be set by regulation, by law. So if you're at 750,000 or 790,000, maybe you get 2 seats at that point. It's
Mhm.
up to how they want to formulate it. In other words, if you're over 50% of the next available district population, maybe they'll give it to you at that point. But right now,
Okay,
yeah,
so how many seats do you want?
I would like to go along with their plan of 150 new seats with anticipation, like we did with Arizona and New Mexico last time. Anticipate that DC and Puerto Rico will be added, and certainly DC will be added once Trump is out of office, because they have the best case. Trump has made the best case for statehood by his abuse of the relationship between the presidency and the executive and the District of Columbia.
So you're
So
looking at 585 instead of 535.
instead of 435, 585.
Right.
Yes, yes, and they kind of skirt the issue, but it's kind of obvious. Well, back up a second. This also, of course, see, there's been a lot of other electoral reform talk, and this is the irritating part about this debate, is that it reformed the electoral college. So let's redo it.
Right.
Let's get rid of the electoral college. Let's let the whatever the national vote was. That'll be how our state will vote. The legislatures can say something like that. Okay,
Mhm.
Robert Reich has supported that, has promoted that solution, primarily because of just getting a reform of electoral college or this increase seems a barrier. But electoral college, direct reform of electoral college seems almost impossible. But if you increase the number of representatives in the House, you increase the number of electors in the electoral college.
Right.
Right. I think we're at an opportune time for the change. And again, Citizens United has to be reformed too. But we're at an opportune time for the change, I think, because I think our allies or former allies will be, after post Trump, will be asking that we reform our electoral process, that we have
You
a
say allies, who do you mean?
Canada, NATO, Australia, Japan, South Korea. They are not happy with us. And so to deal with us, I think they would want to see substantial electoral reform. And that reform comes in increased representation. They all have reasonable representation, levels of representation. Ours is quite unreasonable. Ours is out of whack for a first world economy. We have less representation than Britain, than France, than Germany, than India, than Japan, and I think Japan has the best representation. I can't remember of the industrials if that they're up there though. So all these economic allies and military allies that we've had uh, have been all assaulted by the Trump policies, and I think there'll be enormous pressure for electoral reform in the United States from outside the United States. Hopefully, hopefully. But the fact that this topic doesn't get more attention is is frustrating. Although I would have to say that some of that uh, um, lack of attention is because A, the parties like the process, and B, a party has to have all three House, Senate, and presidency and take up this issue. They need to take up this. The Republicans will not take up this issue, however. The MAGAs and the Republicans will not take up the issue because it will strongly favor urban areas. Urban
So
areas.
every time there's a population shift, like in New York, we've gone down substantially over, the last couple of decades. So it ours would decrease and another state would increase, but it would
Right,
always stay 535.
435.
435, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we all everybody does that, and we throw in the senators in there. So New York's current, I got this in order. Yeah, New York, which is the has the fourth largest delegation at 26. Okay, would increase to 34 under this formula.
Okay.
Yeah. California would go from 52 to 68.
Oh
Texas
my
from
God.
38 to 64. Illinois would go to 22. But here's the thing. Let me get back to some other data here on Missouri and Illinois, for instance. So I mentioned earlier that the Republican supermajorities in the Republican House and Senate are have put it out a redistricting map trying to eliminate the seat of Emmanuel Cleaver in Kansas City, Democratic seat there. Uh,
Hmm.
under this formula, there would be where am I Missouri? My Missouri data here. Yeah, under this formula, have I lost? No, I haven't. There's a little over 6 million people. There is 6,240,000 people in Missouri, um, and we have 8 seats, 2 Democratic. Under this 150 reapportionment, um, we would have 10 seats. Missouri would have 10 seats, 6 in urban areas, 4 in rural areas.
Hmm.
Because at 581,000, they're going to be tighter districts. They're going to be more contiguous because you got, same space, same geographic space, right?
Mm.
Same geographic space, but where are my Missouri numbers? Um, where is it? My oh wait, yeah, the same geographic space, but you're able to stick with the 581,000 and make it much more each of those districts much more contiguous. None of these spaghetti or gerrymander type districts that reach out for red or blue voters. You know,
Yeah, but whether you expand the number of representatives in the House, there's always going to be gerrymandering after the census, right?
well, there's going to be redrawing, but um, there'll be an increase under this plan as the population increases. There'll be an increase in the number of seats. So there will be a formula. So you're not stuck at 585. They'll be like 595, up to 600 or more. However, we may begin a population fallback at some point, right? So and the Congress could decide slow down. We'll
Right?
keep expanding, but we're going to slow it down a little bit, right? So there's those kind of factors. But in each of it's kind of like the stock market. We're in need of a huge correction in
Hmm.
the representation. But again, and it's I guess probably many would argue it's premature until the Democrats control the House. But will the Democrats do it? That's also the issue. Do they have the courage to make the correction? Because they have enjoyed it. They've enjoyed the limit and have used that to their benefit from time to time. But it's obvious that the Electoral College was too subject to Citizens United, too subject to incursions by candidates. We know who, and there needs to be this change. And the American, I think, a number of promoters kind of skirt away from the advantage, obviously, that this gives to urban voters. And urban voters are primarily blue, even in red states. Missouri is considered a red state. However, uh, and of course there are lots of Republicans inside these blue areas of St. Louis and Kansas City. That's why you just can't go by the total number, but you're going to have 50% plus in urban areas that are going to be blue, and maybe even a greater possibility, at least, of third parties, you know, in the House, and that would be interesting.
I don't think I'll see the day that happens. I don't. Because I know what they do in New York to discourage third party candidates from
Yeah,
winning,
well,
right?
so Illinois too. Um,
Mm.
yeah, you have to. There's a higher wall, and those are probably other electoral reforms that need to happen. But reforming all those states is, uh, I think each state probably has. That would be a good. What are the standards for a good a good apportionment of state legislatures by state? Who has the fairest? Uh, mirror,
Now
mirror on
you
the wall. Which state is fairest of all?
now you and I have been talking about this for many years. And over the course of the years, as you watch this, has your thoughts about this changed or remained exactly the same?
I think it's depends on the level of disaster we're looking at now. You know, what are the outcomes of occupying cities with National Guard forces? All and what the state of the economies, state
Uh-huh.
of the economy. This kind of reform. It's even hard to get them to address. Citizens United. That's a more in many ways more limited. You know, psychologically.
Mhm.
Uh, just don't allow corporations to pretend they're individuals with the freedoms to write big checks to candidates, which is that's also Citizens United. Their promoters love the 435. It
Okay.
makes their personnel list short.
But you know something, with so many forces that like the 435, it's going to be hard to change that. Very hard. It will take a constitutional amendment, right?
No, no, no. It's the law.
Okay.
You just need the House and the Senate to have a committed party. In this case, it would have to be the Democrats because there is not the disadvantages to the Republicans are just pretty immense. And it yeah, no, it does not. It takes an act of Congress uh, and signed off by the president, increasing the size, and probably would say at the next census, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably say at the next census. Yeah, which could put it outside our
So
outside our
we're looking at least um 2030, right?
prob- probably unless the disaster is big enough that they have to do something about it. The pressure is too great. I'm going to draw a sign. I hope you can see it on here.
When you
Uh,
say the disaster, what kind of a disaster are you thinking?
well, I do not exactly know, but something on the well. Um, I could go down a list, and then there's so many things to talk about on that list. The list would be, having to remove the president, okay, or there's already shootings occurring by ICE on civilians. At some point, we may have a Kent State type moment. By the way, here's a sign. It's probably backwards too. No 435. You got no kings. No 435.
Wow, I like
This, yeah, no 435.
that. So are there any groups in this country right now that are working towards amending that you know of?
I think there's like American Academy of Arts and Sciences uh, has their formula, the 150. And I don't know how much this is being promoted. I think that right now, what I've seen over the years is that the amount of literature supporting it and explaining it clearly has increased, right?
Okay.
There's more information out there. 10 years ago, there was not what I'm saying just this morning. It wasn't as much. I think that the pressure to reform has increased, and it's kind of obvious that those changes need to be made. The Republicans fear the hell out of it because this will probably come with Puerto Rico and DC as states, and then
Okay.
the Senate is tilted, and then the House is certainly tilted. You know, let me check one more check here on how many states remain at one representative. Oh, okay. So North Dakota, Alaska, Vermont, and Wyoming would all stay at one rep, which means you can throw in South Dakota with two representatives, and you have six states that Puerto Rico outweighs.
But there's no guarantee that Puerto Rico is going to become a state.
Well, of course, there's no guarantee, but it's a definite. I mean, they got statehood or independence or continue. Continue. They don't get out of the money that they're not allowed to do the bankruptcy. There are restrictions on them placed by the Senate, that don't allow them to do a good recovery because the state is in debt and
Mm.
can't get out of that debt. So it either has to go independent or statehood so that it can then get out of the debt. Those two avenues. So there's two choices, and there's been a tendency towards statehood. You know, the replacement people, the NCELs, the MAGA crowd will freak out over, this. One of the things that this does too, a little side note, is that the oldest European settlement will no longer be St. Augustine or Plymouth or Jamestown or Roanoke. It will be Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is the
Wow.
would be the oldest, and in a way, it is already. But you know, the books would have to be rewritten.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the early books always made it seem as though Plymouth was the first colony when it was not. Jamestown was of the surviving colonies. So yeah, so that would be a shift, but a needed shift, I think. You know,
Mm.
so
So bottom line, what do you think is going to happen, let's say within the next 10 years?
well, I hope for the reform because if we don't reform, we continue to be at risk. We continue to be at risk. There needs to be a correction. You know, there needs to be other voices in the House
Mm-hmm.
that bring a level of both reason and opportunity. You know, that bring up other solutions other than the party those provided by the party hierarchy. I'm not inspired by Jeffries or Schumer.
I'm not, I'm not either.
Or even Adam Schiff. You know, these guys, you know, they you know, they're given a platform, but they don't, you know, they don't sound the alarm. They don't rally the charge. You know,
Mhm.
they don't. Yeah, we have to get along and figure out what we can do
Right.
within various limitations. And they need to have a bold agenda. They need to have a bold agenda, and that includes the 530, the 535, see, you got me doing it. The That's because the 585 comes so close to the 535.
Mhm. But even if it is expanded, okay, the
You
parties are going to try to make sure that there will be no independent uh, representatives in Congress. I can't.
Well, it's happened. It has happened before, but yeah, that's a struggle. I know you like the idea of independent candidates. You know, I mean, there's uh, this assumes that MAGA, for the most part, has been sent back home with their tail between their legs to a great extent, but they'll still be a force for a while. So, what am I getting at here? So there will be remnants, and then the old conservatives of the Republican Party. There are those guys that are possibly out there, and then there's the Social Democrats, the Democratic Socialists.
Right.
So there's three factors already that could possibly influence. I think the Democratic Socialists, with this emphasis on urban areas, with 500,000, 581,000 people, you know. By the way, of course, by 2030, these numbers will change a bit.
Hmm.
These, based on the formula, that 150 number will go up,
Hmm.
and even without BC and Puerto Rico, you know. But yeah, and I would say I'm looking at the numbers. The Pacific Island areas, including Guam, don't quite meet the 500,000 threshold yet uh, for a for statehood. So we don't know what would happen with them.
Hmm.
You know, the French used to be everything was a Department of France. You know, they went to the French Parliament. You know, Martinique, Guadeloupe, those are all French departments with representatives in Paris. They probably
So,
learned
so
well.
tell everybody about your YouTube channel.
Oh, thank you. So a friend of mine and I started a YouTube channel. We've known each other about as long as I've known you. Um, yeah, Rich Garling out of Lake County, Illinois, just north of Chicago, and very familiar with Chicago politics. We linked up over my website, SouthernIllinoisDemocrats.org, back in early 2000s before I ran for Congress, and we have a channel called Two Grumpy Men, Two Grumpy Old Men. I like to say TGOM. He doesn't like TGOM, but Two Grumpy Old Men is our podcast channel, and you can find us on YouTube out there. under two grumpy old men, Rich Garling, Tim Bagwell, the two of
Okay,
us.
what do you talk about?
Stuff like this. We did an episode.
Okay,
This was a better episode, I have to say. I had mostly because Rich helped me get my act together from the last time, and I had better notes. So I'm very happy with this interview. We covered a lot of the main points I think that are important to towards this reform.
okay,
Again, echoing what your question there, Citizens United also has to come down before this would even work because
okay,
they would just still keep pumping money in.
okay.
Yeah.
So, Tim, you ran for Congress twice, right?
Correct?
In the same district.
Yes. Huge district.
Yes. Now, it was in Southern Illinois, so Southern Illinois, when people think of Illinois, they think of Chicago and they think of Mayor Daley. Southern Illinois is predominantly Republican, so you ran in the Republican district, right?
That's correct.
How'd you
I read
do?
in the first time around, because it was a presidential, 2004 was a presidential election year. I got 90,000 votes, still only 30% of the vote. And then 2010, which was off the presidential cycle, I got around, oh, was it 60,000? It was still only 30% of the vote. So 30% of the vote of that district at that time was Democrat. That's the way the excuse me, gerrymandering works is
Mhm,
that they like to do 70-30, not just 52-48. They
mhm,
want a solid, no surprises win. And yeah, I ran against Republican John Shimkus twice. I got to say that before the election of Trump, he got out of the business, and I kind of have to give him a pat on the back for that.
So final thoughts on politics, so whatever you want to talk about.
Well, everything is just every day is a new set of information that I think is designed to drive us all crazy, and it just can't be this much change taking place without eventually there being a major disaster of some sort that finally brings change. Uh, you know, I think often people change doesn't happen until something terrible happens. You
Mhm.
know, sadly.
And so, as a retired government worker, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, so I watch all of the stuff that's going on. And as a political junkie, it keeps me very entertained.
Yeah, I bet.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
So, would you ever run for office again?
Ever, ever,
Hmm?
ever, ever.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think I've aged out of it, and
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you've been listening to Dr. Tim Bagwell. You've got your degree in what?
Public administration and policy
Okay,
analysis.
okay. And I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on the Candidates. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And most important, everybody listening to who are listening to this, please mark your calendars. The first Saturday in August, I'm designating as National Candidate Recognition Day. We're going into the 250th birthday of the United States, which we celebrate on July 4th. On the first Saturday in August, let's celebrate all of the candidates who have worked so hard to make sure that we have 250 birthdays in the United States. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Bye bye.